Hello, School Transportation Nation. Want to welcome you back to the podcast. It's brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software, and by School Radio, your source for reliable radio communications. I have with me Taylor Ekbatani. This is her first podcast, guys, back in 2025. She's been out on maternity leave. We're so glad to have her back. She's a new mom too, so a lot to be proud of, right, Taylor?
Lots to be proud of. It's been fun navigating, going back to work and everything, but loving it.
Hey, we're all about kids at STN, makes it all work. A future school bus rider, Taylor. I can see it now. Zach is on his way.
Yeah, exactly, Tony. We'll see. He's in California, though, right now. So, we'll make him walk.
Excellent. All right, before we get to our top headlines, we've got a quick message. Hey, safety is a number one priority for everyone in school transportation, and even more so when needing to communicate in a school bus setting. School radios push-to-talk over cellular or POC radios are the safety enhancement you need to provide clear communication across all aspects of your fleet. Schools, SROs, that's school resource officers, and beyond. School radio helps take safety and connectivity a step further by offering interoperability solutions that bridge conventional two-way radios with POC systems, creating a unified network that boosts effectiveness and safety. This integrated strategy guarantees smooth communication in both emergency situations and daily activities. To learn more about how school radio can improve safety in your communication methods, visit school-radio.com. That's school-radio.com. Taylor's going to be talking a little bit with Superintendent Dr. Walter B. Gonsoulin Jr., Dr. G as he goes by, so a little easier there. And then Transportation Director Kevin Snowden from Jefferson County Schools in Alabama, former state director as well. I remember Kevin from back in the day, also in Florida. They're also finalists for the AASA Superintendent of the Year Award. So that comes up every year around March timeframe. So we do a lot of coverage in the magazine around this big award. Every state has a finalist, and then they whittle that down to 4. So from, I guess, what is it, 52, Taylor?
49. Hawaii doesn't get a finalist, and I think it's because of their superintendent kind of situation. They oversee different complexes as opposed to districts. So I reached out to AASA for confirmation on that, but 49 state representatives.
All right, we'll go with that. 49-4. And so it's a big deal. We've definitely got some great content, Taylor. I know you've been interviewing the different finalists. We've been trying to herd cats, get them to start talking about how transportation, school transportation specifically, plays a big role in those superintendents' day and how they support student transportation needs. You want to dive into maybe a few of the interviews? Obviously, Dr. G, we're going to be talking to soon, but I know you had a few other interviews as well.
Yeah, and these are all online, so if you guys want to go read more about these districts, you can. But we have Dr. Sharon Desmoulins-Carrot, and her transportation director, Joshua Collins, was actually on the podcast last week. So he kind of gave us a breakdown on their operations. If you haven't listened to that, definitely go do that. They're really interesting because they have a lot of different programs that they're, growing, right? So, and that's something that I looked at for the March issue as well, was growth, and not just the student growth, but program growth. And so when you have a superintendent who's very gung-ho about flexible schedules, that's great. And then that also falls on transportation. So they have a really good relationship there, navigating that, working through transportation in all these different aspects, going to all these different programs. We also have Dr. Debbie Jones from Bentonville Public Schools in Arkansas. She is really employee focused, and it really shows. I mean, they're a fully staffed district, which is crazy, right? All school bus drivers in seats, which you don't hear very often. But I spoke with Don Hoover, the Executive Director of Student Services, and he's also featured in the March issue that I mentioned before, just kind of talking about programs, growth, and how you keep your drivers, because it's not just about recruiting, right? It's about retaining your drivers as well. And so they spoke a lot about that culture and how it starts top down. But really great. Those two are online. And then, of course, Dr. G, his district will be online. If it's not already online, it will be soon. And then there's one more that I'm working on. So that will be for next week from Indian River School District in Florida. So stay tuned.
Yeah, and everybody's wondering, hey, where's Ryan? He's putting the March issue to bed right now. So soon enough, that March issue will be going to the presses and out in the mail to you guys. You may have already gotten your February edition, which is all focused on safety. And you see the cover of the magazine, You Shall Not Pass, definitely talking about illegal passing specifically of school buses. The cover shows illuminated stop arms, illuminated school bus signs. Our friends at First Light Safety Products, they provided that image. So really kind of nice to be able to highlight the issue of illegal passing, because it is a really big deal. We talk a lot about it. There's obviously a lot of technology that's being thrown at this with stop arm cameras, illumination. It's being examined by NHTSA. There could be a public awareness campaign. I know we were alluding to the fact that they're working to do kind of an outreach campaign that would be similar to Click It or Ticket in terms of building awareness around seatbelts. We'll see what comes to pass. Obviously, there's been a lot of government funding, we'll call it auditing going on. So we'll see where the cards fall when the dust settles on this program. But definitely a needed thing to build public awareness around illegal passing of school buses. It's at an epidemic level. I think 43.5 million passes was the extrapolated estimate in that range. And that's just a big number, Taylor. And this is a big hot topic that continues to be focused on around student safety.
Mm-hmm. And it unfortunately doesn't seem like it's getting better. You know, I mean, we just had a Wire report posted this week about a Texas man striking a student, you know, as the student was attempting to board their school bus at 6:30 in the morning. You know, the driver didn't stop and hit the student. And it's just sad. Like, I hate reading it. And I know it's just one of the hardest things, I guess, about the job is just reporting on this and seeing this and like constantly being reminded. And so having this technology or other options for directors, it's promising.
Yeah, some other top headlines out there. Friend of STN, she hasn't been around in a few years. Connie Murray, some of those might remember that name. She was the founder of Easy On Products, which basically was an advocate of special needs equipment, tie downs. She would be a specialist in manufacturing child safety restraint systems, and this would be like children that are hard to transport, or they're like little Houdinis getting out of their seats. They needed that specialized types of equipment. Connie and I knew each other for many, many years. She was a great friend, an advocate for special needs children. So she had passed away. Her daughter reached out to us, Wendy, and we have a story up on stnonline.com talking about her life and her impact on the industry. So invite you to go check that out and remember somebody who really brought an impact to the industry many, many years ago. So she'll be missed. So Taylor, what other top headlines are we seeing out there in school transportation land?
Well, I know that you and Ryan have talked a lot about electric school buses and the various mandates that are out there. And we just got news that New York Governor Kathy Hochul is open to extending the mandate that's in New York. So by 2027, districts are supposed to purchase only electric school buses. And then by 2035, they're supposed to have a full electric fleet. But she, during a press conference, noted that she was considering delaying it So that's promising, for some school districts in New York who are maybe looking for a little bit of flexibility in that mandate.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, the decision that comes down. I know we've talked to numerous school bus contractors within the state, and they felt like that target was very unrealistic to hit. So, I think they're anticipating that the deadline will come and then cooler heads will prevail and things will get delayed. So I guess we'll see what happens. Obviously, a lot going on in clean school bus, but at a state level, New York and California tend to lead the charge in this area. So we'll keep a really close eye on this developing news story as we know more. Keep an eye on stnonline.com for all of this news and happenings. Also coming up, not too far off, Taylor, we're less than 30 days away from STN EXPO East in Charlotte, North Carolina. We're working on putting together a stellar program. I know I've been working with Ryan on the Transportation Director Summit. We have keynote speaker Scott Welly, who is going to be our leadership leader, as well as I take the reins and share a lot of the data that's coming out of our surveys about what are the top challenges facing transportation directors and what are those top procurement needs. We really unpack that in kind of a 2-day overview leadership experience. And it's looking great, looking stellar. We got enormous signups. We're so excited to host the industry for our first time in Charlotte, North Carolina. So if you guys haven't signed up yet, you can still register. Go to stnexpo.com/east to get information. And don't miss out on the deadline. We're trying to get it all done by Friday, the 28th. That would be February 28th. Please sign up today. We'd love to have you join us in Charlotte. Taylor, what other things jump out to you from STN EXPO East? I know keynote speaker Scott Welly, who's also at the Director Summit, he's going to talk about kind of how people can raise their game, improve performance. He's more of a sports psychologist. I know we had him on the podcast a few weeks back, really kind of looking internally at a team and try to elevate your game. What do you think he's going to bring to the table, Taylor?
And it's so funny because you and Ryan work so closely, getting the keynotes for the conferences. I feel like when I step into the room and listen to them speak, like I'm an attendee too, right? Like I don't know what they're going to say. And I just know from everyone else what this experience is going to be. And so Scott Welly actually has a thought leader in our March issue that's coming out soon. And I was reading it and I was like, oh my gosh, this guy sounds like he's going to be awesome. He gave these ideas in this thought leader, and he was really focused on, how to optimize, how to become an outperformer. And he broke it down. And I don't want to give it away, Tony, but I'm just going to touch a little tease. He breaks it down into 3 key resources. So he has a mental resource, physical resource, and then looking also at emotional resource. So he breaks it down into these 3 different resources and talks about like how you can be better, essentially, right? And one of the things that really stood out to me was he was like, okay, you probably go, and I'm sure people go to the conferences all the time. It's like, oh, what do you do? Right? Or people ask me like, what do you do? What is your job? And the normal response is just like, oh, I write for a magazine company, or I drive a school bus, right? But he's saying, no, that's really tell what you do. And for a school bus driver, they're safely transporting students to and from school. That's what they do, right? They don't just drive a school bus. And so that really connected with me reading his thought leader and just knowing that he's going to be in Charlotte. I'm super excited. I feel like I'm an attendee myself, and I'm just like super excited to hear him speak.
Well, it is called outperform the norm. So I feel like that is great sage advice right there. I mean, it really causes you to kind of reflect on what is that vernacular, how you define yourself. I mean, we've talked about this with a few other keynotes where they are like, let's remove the word just from your vocabulary. I'm just a school bus driver. I'm just a rider. It's like you're minimizing yourself. In this way, it's kind of taking it to another level. It's like, how do you define what you do? Well, yeah, I'm involved in school transportation. In what capacity, right? Like it almost begs another question. Like, yeah, I edit the magazine. I write for the magazine. What do you write? I write content that is going to impact transportation's lives and hopefully save lives. That's the impact we always say. And I think that's very foundational in terms of the mission of school transportation news, when we really start to unpack what we do and what the team does and what we create. I know one of my best stories was when I was at the conference probably 5 or 6 years ago. We had hired a new team member. Her name was Claudia Newton. She was she came on writing, and she came to the conference for the very first time, and she looked at me and she was like, how do we put on this show? Like, it is so big. I think when you see it and you feel the impact of how many people we affect, and when you really look at our team being such a small team to have such a big impact, it feels powerful. It just feels like you're doing really great work, and your work is valued, and people are taking what you do and they're turning it into action. And that action has real consequences. So I love looking at things like this and really kind of like writing down or redefining how you view yourself and what you do, because when you really start to write it down, I think it provides a lot more clarity that you can really articulate that back. Because when you think about it, you can say 20 different things, but you have to write it down. And then you have to say, okay, how do I combine all these thoughts? Maybe you can chat GPT the thoughts together. I don't know. But I think that story was interesting to me. And it felt to me like, wow, we're doing really good stuff here. And I think that's kind of happened through the years at the conferences. And that's what draws people to STN EXPO or the TSD conferences, is the passion that we have, the passion of our speakers, our experts, our keynotes, our team, to just deliver something that's unique that can help people impact safety, security, special needs, operations, maintenance. You could go on and on, energy, student behavior, right? You look at those top challenges, which usually the top 5 kind of are always the same top 5. And we always just have to reflect on what are we doing as a company, as an organization, to help transportation professionals be armed with all the best information, armed with all the tools to be able to tackle some of these tough challenges.
Yeah, Tony. And honestly, kudos to you and Ryan for picking the keynote speakers, because they are phenomenal. And I'm not just saying that because, I'm part of STM, but you guys do a really good job of picking people who aren't, who are more open-minded, right? So it's not just a pinpoint. They talk about stuff that can apply to all parts of your life and how you can be a better person. And I think that really shows. And like one of the keynotes that I think about now, especially since I'm a mom, and I don't remember his name, but he came to Indy a couple years ago, and it was a psychology of leaving a child on a school bus. And I think about that all the time, because no one wants to leave anyone behind, right? Like I have a little 4-month-old now, and the last thing I would want to do is leave him in his car seat, but I'm not used to it. I'm not used to going to the back and grabbing a car seat, right? It's only been 4 months. So I can only imagine these school bus drivers, like, they walk the bus every single day. They're not used to seeing someone, sitting in the back seat. So I think about him all the time, and just that psychology of like, okay, if you are, taking your child to daycare and you don't normally do that, leave a shoe in the back seat, because that will remind you, hey, hold on, where's my shoe? So I think about that a lot.
Yeah, Taylor's referring to Dr. David Diamond, who came in and did a keynote. And what was interesting about the keynote that she's referring to is he was identifying, why do people leave their children in their passenger cars, right? And there are a lot of children that die inside passenger cars, but the parent forgets about the child. And, we're trying to make the connection to, why do school bus drivers leave children in school buses, right? And granted, that's a bigger vehicle, but how can a driver walk by a child who could be 100 pounds and not see them, right? This kind of blindness that they're just going through the motions. And, one of the big issues that people said is they're in a rush. School bus drivers have to go to the bathroom, so they aren't paying attention. They're just focused on certain elements that are affecting their person. And those actions unfortunately have dire consequences. So it's really making the connection. So I'm glad that something like that, Taylor, landed, especially being a new mom. You have to be 100% every day, right? You can't have an off day. You can't forget your little guy in the back seat, because that could have dire consequences. He's counting on you, just like all the kids are counting on their school bus drivers and their transportation professionals to be 100%. And it's difficult to be 100%. No one is without flaw, without mistake. It happens. But we do our best to be trained, to have the technology to support these decisions, so you don't have to really call that parent and say, I'm sorry, your child died on our watch, right? Like, that's a call you never want to make, right? That's a gut-wrenching, life-changing call that will haunt you. And I think that again, that's where a session like Dr. David Diamond sits with you, Taylor, because it's like, I can't believe this happens so often. How do I avoid this in my life? How do I carry this forward personally and professionally? So very, very moving to hear that had an impact on you.
Yeah, and I think attending the conferences reignites, the passion. I know all of the transportation professionals have passion for their job, right? But you get into the day-to-day, the workload, you just doing the same thing. But coming to these conferences, you get to listen to keynote speakers, and you can almost take a step back and be like, hey, how can I be better? Maybe I'm already great, but what can I do to be better? Networking with other transportation directors. So I really think, even for a staff member, like little old me here, it's going to these conferences just reignites that passion.
Yeah, I wrote my column too about time well spent in the March issue, about going to conferences and the value of conferences, and really try to identify the value of that for our readers. And to your point, I mean, we get so caught up in our daily lives that we forget to focus on ourselves, because we're so worried about taking care of everyone else in our life that we forget sometimes, okay, you got to do some self-care. And that also includes professional care, right? Like, how do you raise your game? Because we're just trying to check the box. Okay, this next deadline's coming up. This next thing is due. This route needs to get completed. This employee thing needs to get taken care of. Well, how do you take a step back and re-energize yourself? And I feel the same way. When I go to conferences, I walk away feeling very energized. Like, how can I take what I learned and put it into action? I think the worst part is you go back from a conference, you're feeling energized, and you just fall right back into the same old routine and nothing changes. So I think you have to take away something, make a goal, set a goal for yourself and say, I'm going to do X. Like, when I go to a conference, I want to achieve X. And then when you walk away, say, did I achieve my goal? And if I didn't, how could I have done better to achieve it, right? And so I think setting out those clear expectations and goals will also help you give that info to your boss and justify your reason for going to a conference. So really love those thoughts, Taylor. Really great stuff. I'm excited for your interview with Dr. G here in just a second, but we got a quick message. Hey guys, what do software, hardware, and safety have in common? One word: TransFinder. At the STN EXPO in Reno, TransFinder won 3 Innovation Choice Awards, voted on by STN EXPO attendees for best software, best hardware, best safety technology. TransFinder's Route Finder plus routing solution and apps, Stop Finder and Wayfinder, are well known in the industry. Not everyone realizes TransFinder provides hardware like card readers, tablets, and mounts. And as for safety, Patrol Finder for schools is TransFinder's latest solution, designed to make buses and campuses safer. TransFinder's president and CEO, Antonio Civitella, said the recognition means so much because it's voted on by STN EXPO attendees. Civitella said, we know a lot is riding on TransFinder because a lot is riding on those yellow buses that travel through our communities. TransFinder must continue to innovate as more is being expected of transportation departments from district leadership as well as parents. Learn more at transfinder.com. That's transfinder.com.
Hello, nation. We are back. Taylor Equitani here. I have two fabulous guests with us this week. So not just one, but we have two, and they are both from Jefferson County Schools in Alabama. So we have Dr. Walter Gonsoulin Jr. and Kevin Snowden, the Director of Transportation, and Dr. G is the Superintendent. So welcome, guys. Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you. It's our honor.
Thank you very much.
Great. So if you guys don't know, which you should, Dr. G is one of the 4 finalists selected for the AASA Superintendent of the Year Award, and that's going to be announced, is it next week now?
March the 6th, so we still have 2 Thursdays left.
Okay, and that'll be in New Orleans. So are you going to go down for Mardi Gras?
Well, nah, I won't be there for Mardi Gras. You know, that's my home state, so I've had enough of my fair share of Mardi Gras, but we'll be there right after Mardi Gras.
Okay. Yeah, I saw it was the same week, so I was like, I'm sure some people are really going to soak in the whole experience.
That's right. I'm sure some people take advantage of that.
Yeah. And Kevin, I know that you're a familiar name to the industry as well. You came out of retirement for this role, so that's very exciting.
Well, I tell you what, it's a blessing to serve with Jefferson County Schools under the leadership of Dr. G. I've got great administrative support. We have a wonderful team, and it's just truly a blessing to be back in the industry.
And there will be an article online if there's not yet on your guys' district. And we posed some questions earlier, and I've talked to both of you guys. So stay tuned, listeners, for that article coming out if it's not already out by the time you're listening to this. But starting with Dr. G, can you kind of talk about your path into education? You know, something that stood out to me when I was reading your responses was you were surprised in elementary school that you didn't know you could get an award for reading. And it kind of made me think, that's probably how you continued, your life through education and now Superintendent of the Year Award. You're probably like, I didn't even, do this for an award, but here we are.
That's correct. And that's been the story of my life as it relates to that. You know, very like you said, very early on, 2nd, 3rd grade, I received the news that I was going to get an award for reading. And I was bewildered. It's like, I didn't know you can get an award for doing something that you liked already and loved. And so, but, I was pleased to get that award and honored, and just as I am for this one. And so education has always been that gift for me in my life that just keeps giving.
Mm-hmm. And what has kind of your path been? You know, you've kind of done a lot of different jobs in education, teacher, coach, principal. I mean, I could keep going.
Right, that's right. I've had over the 35 and a half years. I've started off as a 6th grade teacher, elementary teacher, and really fell in love with that job. And that led me to eventually being a behavior interventionist. So outside of the classroom, but still connected to the children, and which my quest, my love for public education and for working with children led me to want to be a principal, and then also want to be a superintendent where I was over a district. And so it's been a great journey, met a lot of good people, worked with a lot of great people, and served different families from different communities in 3 different states, as a matter of fact.
Wow. And something that you wrote in your responses that stood out to me was that you were the first in your family to graduate high school. So how does that experience kind of serve, you as a leader now as a superintendent? I'm sure you want these kids to succeed.
Yes, that's a lot of things that I do day to day, and even the team from Jefferson County that we do, it's more than just business. It's personal, and so by me being the first to graduate high school, to go to college from my immediate family, then I have my thumb on the personal experiences that some of our children and families are facing today. And so, you can be empathetic, right? And that drives you to have more and more opportunities for all the children, and not just have opportunities, but putting them in a position where they can take advantage of those opportunities. And having lived that, it really helps me to have the hope and the vision for all of our children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And then jumping over to Kevin really quickly, if you kind of want to talk to our listeners how you got started in the industry, kind of your progression. I know you've held some pretty important roles in transportation.
Well, unbeknownst to me, it started at age 16 when my principal said, "Hey, you need to go get your bus license." Well, here I am, 45 plus years later, and I've been a band director, a local supervisor, and a state director of 2 different states, and then retired. And then they asked me to come out of retirement, and here I am, working in a wonderful position with a new perspective on life, and I'm loving it.
What were the 2 states you served as state director?
So I was state director in Alabama, and then after 30 years in Alabama, I retired and was asked to be the state director in Florida. And I served there for about a year and a half. And my kids and my wife were homesick, and our house hadn't sold, so we just moved back home.
There's nothing like going back home.
No, nothing like home.
What were some of the big differences between transportation in Florida and Alabama?
Oh, well, I guess their overall perspective is a little bit different. Alabama, I can't say enough good things about it. In Florida, there's a lot of good things about it. It's just 2 different leadership styles, and learning them both was a challenge for me. But Alabama's got a very solid program, and so does Florida. So, I mean, they're just the way they handle the programs. They're just 2 different programs.
Okay. So tell us, whoever wants to jump in, tell us a little bit about Jefferson County. What's the background on your guys' district? How many students you serve?
Well, we have a district that's compared, a school district that's compared to the state of Rhode Island. We are a little bit smaller than that particular state. I think 1,124 square feet. We serve,
wow.
Yeah, we serve 34,400 students, and in 13 different feeder patterns. And I was with this group yesterday. In those 13 different feeder patterns, we have 22 mayors and city council body members. And so could you imagine having to serve 22 different groups of community groups, who are very different from each other? It's a task, but I always say we just serve them one at a time.
Could you clarify, really quick, what a feeder pattern is?
Yeah, so that might be like in one community, we have 2 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school. So that's a feeder pattern.
Okay.
And they usually exist within a city, right? We have the different cities, but they also could include a couple of schools outside that city, which we would call unincorporated Jefferson County area. But we feed children children from kindergarten to 12th grade within a given location.
Okay, gotcha.
And then, so we have, in terms of economics, we have about 61% of our children ride the bus, and we have about that same percentage of children who are free and reduced lunches. And we have a work staff of 4,500 employees with 57 schools, 13 high schools, 11 middle schools, and 30 elementary schools.
Wow.
Yes.
So transportation's probably busy.
We're busy all the time.
Well, I think Kevin could talk to that.
We are. Our phones start.
And how many routes do we have?
Oh, we've got 555 bus routes served by 488 buses. And we carry a little over 20,000 kids each way, morning and afternoon. And, 4 million miles plus in a year. I mean, it's a big operation. Keeps us hopping, that's for sure.
Are you guys short school bus drivers?
Well, yes and no. We have all our routes staffed, but we really need sub bus drivers is what we have for. People that are willing to come in and help out on an as-needed basis.
Okay. Wow. So, I mean, that's good, though. At least all your routes have a person. What do you do when someone calls out?
Well, we try to fill it as best we can or run a double route. Occasionally, we do have to cancel a route. We don't like it. That's our last resort. But we do have mechanics that drive. We have even staff members that drive. I've been on a bus. My assistant's been on a bus. My coordinators have been on a bus. So we jump in when we have to.
And we're always recruiting bus drivers. You know, we try to go within the communities that we serve, so those to try to recruit bus drivers. Because if you're in the community, if you're from the community,
Right.
then you know the community, and it's better to serve. We've really tried to ramp up our efforts of recruiting teachers to be bus drivers as well. And so, under Kevin's leadership, you know, we have made some great strides in the area of transportation. And I will say, on top of that, on top of picking kids up to bring them to take them to school and then take them home afterwards, we have programs such as the Signature Academy that is occurring during the school day, and we're taking them from one school to the next and then back. So our transportation department is very vital to the success of Jefferson County Schools.
Well, and I'll bounce off that on the first part of it, Dr. G, if you don't mind, and that is we are actively recruiting. And if anybody out there that can hear this podcast, if you want to drive for Jefferson County, just give me a call. I'll be glad to help you out.
The teacher thing was really interesting. So do you have like a number or percentage? Do you know how many teachers are driving? And is that, I'm assuming they come in the morning and then maybe drive in the afternoon after class?
That is correct. I don't have an actual percentage. Maybe Kevin might know.
Well, we got about probably 40 to 45 of our drivers are teachers or coaches or some form of employee within the school system.
Wow, that's an impressive number.
Yes.
We can use more. If anybody out there wants to do it, we'll train them.
Kevin has a national audience, so he's going to make sure he takes advantage of that.
That's right.
And drivers, as many different new buses drivers as possible.
I love it. Always advertising.
Right.
And you kind of touched on it, Dr. G, but how does transportation play a role in your district initiative and goals?
So from the affective domain to reality of running routes, you know, I said 61% of our student body, you know, rides the bus every day. And so that means that's a large 20,000 students. Those are the first employees that represent Jefferson County that our students encounter each morning, and they're the last representative of the school district. So just those people interacting with those children in the morning and in the afternoon is very critical. But inside of that, you know, we have things such as, I mentioned it earlier, the Signature Academies, where children, we believe that a child's zip code should not limit that child's academic experience. And so we have different clusters, the northern, the southern, the eastern, and western clusters, where we've grouped high schools together from different communities. And so a child could be on the campus of one high school, but there's a very interesting program that child would like to participate in at another school within its zone. And so that could be a health science class, biomedical. It could be a building construction. It could be JROTC. Our bus drivers take those children from one school to the next so that they can participate in those programs. And then they, after they finish that class or classes, they take them back to their home-based school. And so this opens up an array of opportunities for our children. What we believe is that it's one thing to have the opportunity to do it, but then it's another thing to actually have access to where you actually taking advantage of the programs that we have. Transportation plays a key role in that, even in our after-school programs. We have after-school programs, and so we have to get the children home after that. And those bus drivers who are driving those bus routes, they've already driven an afternoon bus route, but they got to come back and take those children back home. But all of this is critical to the success of Jefferson County Schools because it's giving our children opportunities to succeed.
Well, Taylor, I would be doing an injustice if I didn't mention that Dr. G's vision for student access also includes Wi-Fi capabilities on our school buses. He had a vision for our Signature Academy buses. And then because of grant opportunities, another opportunity opened up in that research. And now instead of 19 buses, we have right now as it stands 450 school buses equipped with Wi-Fi and another 50 over the next 3 weeks. So we'll have 500 of our school buses equipped with Wi-Fi capabilities for students that have school devices that it automatically connects to the Wi-Fi on the bus so that they can do their reading or whatever homework they may have on a longer commute and have that done before they get home or on their way to school. So Dr. G has done a fine job leading that program.
And I like to add, with our signature academies traveling from one school to the next during the day, you always run into the possibility of traffic, right? And so the children could arrive to that program late or traveling back to their home school. They still have classes over there that they need to take. So arriving back late, providing every child in our district, that child has a Chromebook. And so they're always connected to the classroom. So if they're late getting there, they can log on and still be connected to the instruction that's occurring. And either way, whether they're going to the signature academies or whether they're going back to the home school. So I attribute that to, again, all of our team members working together, our transportation department, our technology department. And when you're all on, when the organization, when the members of the organization, we're all on the same page, they look within their organization or within their department and they say, well, this is the initiative that's going on. What can my department do to help enrich that experience? And that's how we're able to get the Wi-Fi on the buses because, in cabinet, we all were talking and we saw the things that we were having problems with. We knew that there was a time issue. And children might not be on task. And so someone from the technology department looked into different monies and how can we purchase that equipment and then put it on the bus. And that's how we're able to do it.
That's huge. So you're having these interdepartment kind of relations where you're not siloed these departments, right, to their each individual little sector, but instead engaging all of them together to see where technology can play a role in transportation.
That's absolutely correct. And, in a big system, it is very important for us to think that way and to operate that way. We all know what the initiatives are. We know the goals and the vision and the mission of the school district. They're written down. They're clear. We meet quarterly during the semesters. And so we're constantly having these conversations of what it would take to serve our students. And I had the fortunate experience the other day. Mr. Snowden gave a professional development workshop for all bus drivers to talk about the Wi-Fi on the buses. That was one of the topics. And, I had the fortunate experience to stand before that group of people and to tell them how important their role was to the mission and the vision of Jefferson County Schools. And, I told them, I said, were it not for you, then 61% of our students wouldn't get to school or have a harder time looking for transportation. If they can't get there, they can't learn. And then to get them back home safely. And if it wasn't for you, these new initiatives that we're putting in place, we couldn't get them from one school to the next. So every role is key.
I love that. Kevin, can you talk on the Wi-Fi on school buses? How has parents or school bus drivers, what's kind of been the conversation? Has it been going well? I mean, I know you said it's over 500 now that buses are equipped. So what's that rollout process been?
Well, it's been challenging to roll it out, I'll tell you that. We work with subcontractors from companies and, without getting into the details, but making sure we find all the buses, because not all the buses are parked at one facility. We have 57 different quote unquote parking locations in different parking lots of different schools. So in a district this big, it makes it complicated trying to find them all. But finding them all and making sure that we have the crews install them correctly and that they don't interfere with any of the other electrical components on the bus. That's been the challenge, but we've been real blessed with that. And so far we've met success rolling it out. So it's been doing real well.
And I know you're using Wi-Fi as almost like a building block, right? So you guys want to look at cameras or GPS.
Well, we already have cameras, but we are looking
Okay.
as a side thing for Wi-Fi. We are looking at perhaps turn-by-turn navigation capabilities. We're looking at time clock capabilities, getting away from a time sheet and going electronic with a digital timestamp. We think that's important. We are also looking at communication with voice over IP being an option with an external speaker that's within our realm because of this. And none of that would have existed without Wi-Fi. And then down the road, perhaps we'll look at student tracking, and that'll be another can, but we're going to wait to open that one.
Okay.
And it helps us to, again, have another tool that makes the organization better, makes independent departments better, giving us data, right? We can track down to how much fuel we're using, and then, how can we become more efficient in that area? But we also could track to see how long are particular children or specific children riding on these buses, truly riding on the buses to and from school. And, what impact could that possibly have on student learning? And can we do things, use that data to figure out, can we do things differently? Because there's a big difference from riding a bus, because some of our school patterns and feeder patterns, they're very rural. And so a child could ride on a bus for 45 minutes in the morning and in the afternoon. Well, some could ride for 20 minutes. Is there a way, using the data, to lessen or decrease the amount of time that children are on buses so we can get them to and from school?
Yeah, basically streamlining.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And kind of jumping back to the interdepartment kind of workings, looking specifically at transportation, I'm going to start with you, Dr. G.
Mm-hmm.
What benefits are there for administration having that working relationship with transportation, knowing the ins and outs of the operation and where, the two can connect?
So one of the things, when you have a school district as large as our school district, and one of our goals is to ensure that our children have extracurricular participation in different clubs and different activities. Were it not for transportation, many of these things could not occur, right? And so when we are talking and meeting, we have the general goals and vision of the district, but then we have to start talking about the operations and how do we make all of this come together. And so we are very strategic that every week we have executive cabinet meetings, and there's a representatives from all of those groups. And we talk about everything from parents paying fees for participating in different things, to athletic events, to teaching and learning. And everyone at the table, they're listening so that they can see, how does this affect my department? And then what can I do in order to make sure that this happens? There at one point, I was questioned on why would I have the finance department in those meetings, executive meetings, and because they deal with numbers, right? And I said, no, they deal with more than numbers. They deal on a day-to-day basis with things that help us pay for the things that we say we need. And so I need for them to hear the business of the day so they could understand what we're buying, why is it necessary. And transportation plays a big role in that, because if we don't have a way to get our children there, many of them would not participate. And, with the State Department right now and them measuring chronic absenteeism, what we learned in one of our feeder patterns, one of our patterns that have a high chronic absenteeism, where children are missing 18 or more days of school. Well, 2 years ago, when we couldn't fill those positions for the buses, the chronic absenteeism was high. That same feeder pattern, we have a bus driver for each one of those positions. We've realized that has decreased the number of children being chronically absent. Had a meeting with the principal the other day, and the question was, what do you think contributed to this? And he said, all of my bus routes were filled. And that's how we work together, not only in the executive, but throughout our central office. Whatever we're talking about in executive, we bring all of those directors together in central office, and they hear how everything comes together, and we filter it down to the principals. And all of those meetings happen every month, so that everybody can be on the same page and always looking to see how can we help meet the mission and the vision collectively.
You know, Taylor, bouncing off of what Dr. G just said, we do work together. One of the examples in that particular feeder pattern is a mechanic serving as a bus driver just to get that job done, because we know it's important that education happen. And the only way they get there is by bus. So we make sure that that bus is equipped, ready to go to get those kids in the school. So
yeah, and Taylor, when I was saying it, I noticed that Kevin was shaking his head because he knew what feeder pattern I was talking about, right?
I knew exactly which one.
Right. And so can you imagine the power of a transportation director having a knowledge of saying, in this particular feeder pattern, we've got to have a bus driver.
Right.
We can't have a vacancy there, because if that bus doesn't run, they don't get to school.
That's true.
And then the bus drivers knowing I've got to be at work. We had 90 bus drivers that had perfect attendance for the first semester.
Yep.
Isn't that right?
98.
Yeah, understanding the importance of them being there every day so kids could get to school.
We had one of those drivers that hasn't missed a single day in 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah, we bought her some flowers too.
And then Kevin, jumping over to you, how can transportation be involved and feel connected to the greater district?
Well, we see the needs of each of the schools, and, we feel the growing pains of the community, and we have a formula, if you will, that we try to put in place when we need extra routes and when we need to consolidate perhaps and then move that one to another. So we've got a system down that we try to keep our hands close to the pulse of what we need and try to react accordingly so that we can make it happen.
And Taylor, if I could add to that, the bottom line is every individual in an organization, and in this case, we're talking about transportation, they need to personally know the people in the community that they're serving. And so then therefore, they know the needs of this particular school. They know the needs of a particular feeder pattern. And that sets the pace for everything, even from the people who are organizing the routes, right? They're actually drawing out and creating the routes. They know that in this particular feeder pattern, in this particular community, that we've got to watch the time that children are actually on the bus to and from school. And that's going to be key and important for those children being in attendance every day at school. So that's where, the importance of any one of our departments, but in this case, we're talking about transportation, everyone knowing that this is more than just business, it's personal, and that the service that they're providing, someone is counting on it so that they can get to school and get an education.
Yeah, I like that. It's not just business, it's personal.
It's personal.
That's right.
That's good. Well, thank you guys so much for jumping on and sharing your insight. And congratulations again, Dr. G, on being a finalist. We'll see what happens in 2 weeks or so. But thank you guys again, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I enjoyed it.
Special thanks to Dr. G, Kevin Snowden, and Taylor Ekbatani. Great to see you, Taylor. First podcast of 2025. Glad to be back. TNT, that's how we do it. So, guys, also want to thank our sponsors, TransFinder and School Radio. Make sure and check them out, guys. Email them. Let them know you heard about them on the STN podcast. We love getting the love back so we can keep bringing you the great content every week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to Pods Nation. You can go to stnonline.com for all the latest news, analysis, webinars. There's lots of great content on there. Wire reports, special reports, magazines to download. Also, STN EXPO is coming up March 20th through the 25th out in Charlotte, North Carolina. If you can't make that, we got you covered this summer too in Reno, Nevada and Lake Tahoe. STN EXPO West, July 11th through the 16th. And we have our super early bird discount to save $200 on your registration all the way through April 11th. So make sure you take advantage of that and come out and visit us at one of the great conferences we have for you. All right, nation, we love you. We'll see you next week.